Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey, and good morning to you. It's Wednesday, the 17th of July, 2019, and I'm really going to try mightily. I was talking to myself on the way down here, saying, you've got to stop, this has happened before, you've got to stop beginning every show with a sigh, because I inadvertently do it. And yeah, given the reality of what's happening and what we talk about, it's understandable, but it still is not a good show open. Just not. Unless we could make a musical version, some kind of a lead-in with like, hey, woe is us and all that kind of stuff, but, make it funny or something. But no, they're from the heart, and they're unhappy. So those of you who are watching this can see that I'm holding my microphone because the chewing gum that has given up. And the only way I'm going to get through the show is this way. Okay. Oh, that was where almost a sigh. Just when I start, it bubbles up. It just bubbles up. I'm going to try really not to. Okay. Let's just start talking about something and oh dear. Let's start with it and then sorry. How am I supposed to wipe my nose, hold my mic, and do the show how am I supposed to do this? Would that I were an octopus. Okay, so I was saying yesterday that we need to steel ourselves and pace ourselves because we are in for a brutal and frightening election season. Well, I'm not going to start here. This came from the Wall Street Journal today, and I have not seen these numbers. I'm not surprised by them. And it is incredibly a little opinion piece from one of their more liberal contributors. And by that, I don't mean particularly liberal, just more liberal, which means, I guess, not, a neo-fascist. And he's talking about the fact that nationalism, which is what Trump is riding on, white nationalism to be specific, but of course that's not racist, is not a good fit, is where this guy's coming from for the nation founded in 1776. Well, that's not true. Was it founded in 70? We declared our independence. The nation itself wasn't particularly founded, I guess, until how's that work? Until the Constitution was ratified? I don't know. 69% of voters, this is what we're up against, okay? I'm sorry, I should have a handkerchief. 69% of voters who supported Trump in the primaries last time around believe that you cannot be truly American if you haven't lived in the United States for most of your life. That number drops only slightly when you say, is somebody truly American who wasn't born here? Which is to say that 63%, two-thirds of the people who voted for Donald Trump answered to the question, 72% of Trump primary voters said that you are not truly American unless you were born here. Well, that's why I guess, what? That means that so many of our fathers, grandfathers, spouses, my son, who knows no other country, would not be considered by almost 3/4 of the people who voted for Donald Trump to be an American. Wow. These numbers show that Trump knows who his voters are, and it's why we're in for such a difficult year and a half. Also, disconcertingly, 56% of Republicans and 63% of Trump primary voters say you cannot be truly American unless you are Christian. Okay, I'm going to have to... unless you are Christian. Well, that takes me out of the game then. So I'm not American to these people because I'm a Jew. My son is not because he was not born here. You see how their view of, and the president's, of who is a real American, where that they hold these views in where there's supposed to be a heart. And extraordinarily, almost a third of all of these people believe that Americans must be of European heritage or descent. Well, that's just flat out KKK material. So, Houston, we got a problem. And I've got somebody emailing me saying racism, xenophobia, boring. Huh. Wow. Well, then why don't you tell the president and the Republican Party to stop basing their entire, what seems raison d'etre, their need to court racists and xenophobes and anti-Semites. Talk to them. Don't talk to me, who's reacting to it. When I read that 3/4 of the people who voted for him don't think I'm a real American because I'm a Jew, you don't think that's troublesome? Because you fit all the bills, you're a white, heterosexual Christian. Well, then you're in free. You're a real American as opposed to me, as opposed to my son, my grandfather. Nobody gives a shit, says this emailer. Trump in 2020. Wow. Okay. I just think we need to be not in our own bubbles, right? We need to look with unvarnished, I don't think that's the right adjective, but whatever. We need to see things clearly. And what we are seeing and what we are learning is that a frightening number of Americans, and we're obviously talking about white Americans here. How can you get away from race when we're talking about white America, of which I appear to be a part? But if you start digging down with these white Americans I'm talking about, the Trump voters, An awful lot of them don't claim me as a fellow white American. Wrong religion. You can't be Muslim, you can't be Hindu, you can't be atheist, you can't be a Sikh, you can't be a Jew, you can't be, well, you name it, a Buddhist. I mean, however many religions there are. And it's weird because where is that written in any of our foundational documents that you have to be a white Christian? Where is that? I must have missed that part. Kellyanne Conway yesterday saying to a clearly Jewish reporter, "What's your ethnicity?" when he was asking her a question about Trump's tweet. What's your ethnicity? This is where we are. This is getting, if you don't recognize what is happening in your country, as much as it is mind-blowing, as much as you never, ever, ever thought in your wildest dreams, you would see on a daily basis this level of white nationalism and coming from the highest offices in the land, spread by media. This is your country now. Incredible. A reporter asks a question, a perfectly legitimate question. What's your ethnicity? The same person who asked that question, what's your ethnicity, Kellyanne Conway, also yesterday, on two separate occasions in two different statements, said that the four congresswomen that the president targeted were part of a dark underbelly of people in this country. What do you think she meant by that? And how strange that she used the term dark underbelly. And then in the other thing she said, she got rid of underbelly, but she kept the dark. And then she went nuts and said, we're sick and tired of you people saying bad stuff about our country. And this is a woman who serves as the right-hand maiden of a president who achieved the office he holds, the office he defiles on a daily basis, by virtue of speaking constant ill of America. Do we remember? He called, when he was running, he said we were a laughing stock a number of times. Even in his inaugural address, he talked about, and I remember when he said it, I thought, what the hell are you talking about? He talked about American carnage. And this guy, who got to where he is by disparaging this country, now says that it is unpatriotic to say anything negative about it. He said over and over that the United States was no better than Russia when it came to moral values. Remember the exchange with Bill O'Reilly, if you remember him? When he was going on about how awful America was, how unexceptional it was. He refused to say he thought American exceptionalism was an awful turn of phrase. And if you think that he didn't, I mean, we can cite chapter and verse, give you videotapes, okay? Not that it matters for people like the guy who emailed me. So he's doing that interview with O'Reilly, and he's praising his friend Vladimir Putin, who's very busily at work trying to get him to the White House. And it was even too much for Bill O'Reilly, who said to the Republican candidate for president, "But Putin's a killer," said Bill O'Reilly. And Trump famously responded, "What? Do you think our country is so innocent?" Now, you can argue that he's right. We're killers too. But can you imagine if AOC or Ilhan Omar were to say that? Why, he'd want their heads, right? And here's the smartest thing that I saw anybody say. This is a Columbia University professor, scholar of conservatism. And she said this about him speaking ill of America, of how it was coming apart at the seams if he wasn't allowed to ride to its rescue. And then he gets elected. And she said, so now, as president, he sees America as an avatar of himself. So it must be great because, of course, he is great. And to speak ill of America, a.k.a. Donald Trump, is unacceptable. She says, from this perspective, to allow that America has faults would be to allow that Trump himself has faults, something he has never been willing to acknowledge. And this idea, we ran into it in the 60s. If you voice criticism of the country, Republicans will always tell you to get the hell out. Love it or leave it. It was a bumper sticker during the 60s. And yet, it is those who speak critically of the country who have often been its greatest patriots. Tony says, that first emailer sounds like one of the trolls on your Facebook page. The comment section on your Facebook page is filled with Trump trolls and Russian bots. I have to laugh when I see them because I doubt that you have anything to do with posting on the page, let alone reading the comments. You're so smart. You're correct. I don't see them. They're wasting their energy and their time, although they're getting to the people who might, go to that page. We have a caller. Caller, go ahead, please.
Hello?
Hello.
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 Hey, I just wanted to, I think I'm on topic, but I wanted to ask you something about something, but I'm afraid you're going to get really enraged. That's not my intention in asking you this question. It's something I genuinely don't understand. So, in all of this controversy that the Omar's comments have come back up, and what she said about the Benjamins or whatever. I forget that was termed, on your show and elsewhere as being anti-Semitic. So, but I'm trying to. But what she was. So this is what I don't understand is on Monday on your show you were talking about how AOC's chief of staff or whatever shouldn't use the racism term whenever it's not justified. And as I recall, this is the comparison I'd like to make with the risk of pissing you off, is I thought what Omar was talking about was that lobbyists for Israel, were throwing money, and that's why.
Listen. You are
Israel.
incorrect in remembering that I said that her comment was anti-Semitic, or that she was an anti-Semite. She was.
No, I don't think you think
she was factually incorrect in that she was talking about AIPAC, and AIPAC does not in any way lobby with. I mean, they don't do their thing with money. They do not. It is well known. So she was the trope when you put Jews together with their money somehow buying influence in government. That is an old anti-Semitic trope. And I remember saying that she needs to, she comes from Somalia, right? Sudan.
Yeah.
One of those, I'm pure American here. Sudan, Somalia, what's the difference? She comes from a Muslim nation in which she, I have to believe, was schooled from day one in anti-Israel. This is what has been put in her head since day one. And I said she needs to listen a little more and perhaps educate herself a little more. Whatever. I don't think she knew that was an anti-Semitic trope. The fact that she does not support Israel does not make her an anti-Semite either. Although, as I was saying yesterday, clearly the Republicans are helping to make this a truism that the word Israel now is becoming synonymous with the word Jew. So if you're down with Israel, you're down to the Jews as well, because they're starting to mesh, and that's where the left has done a lot of damage in that regard. I don't know. I have often said about anti-Semitic people calling people anti-Semites that gets thrown around too much by some Jews. And that devalues the word. And I just used that same thing for, doing what AOC's chief of staff did in regard to throwing racism around. You don't want to devalue these words.
No.
That's all.
No, so I guess, because I guess maybe what I was, so you were saying that what she was saying sounds like an anti-Semitic
No, it
trope,
is. It's an anti-Semitic trope. Doesn't mean she is an anti-Semite, although if she doesn't educate herself and keeps on using those tropes, then I'd have to revisit my sense of where she's coming from.
So can you correct me? Because I had read, I'm not going to be able to pull up the reference or anything, but somewhere that the way AIPAC works is that it hooks up candidates with donors, but that the AIPAC does not directly give the money.
I don't know. I just know that they do not directly give any money. They what they're about is education. So they're about putting out their point of view and doing like trips for Congress people to Israel. They do what a lot of lobbyists do.
Well,
they're a lobbying organization.
That was exactly what I thought. And in general, it's kind of proud of. I would have thought that a trip to Israel would not be like a bad thing to get, but if we were talking about a trip to other places, wouldn't that be a way of lobbying that we would, in every other case, look at as something that would influence the legislator?
No, but I think the legislators are to report that kind of. Look, I am not an expert on these kinds of the laws about this. I don't know if you just report it or you don't allow AIPAC to pay your way. They just I don't know. Okay, so
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I don't know either.
Okay, well, so we both don't know.
I know.
We both don't know. But thank you. I did not get angry, and so appreciate the call. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Bye.
bye. This was interesting that I saw. If you go to the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission website, this is our government, and they defined for you what is illegal, what constitutes harassment of an employee based on race or gender or national. Here's the one for national, or it's just a little part of it. This is from the EEOC website. Harassment based on national origin. Examples of potentially unlawful conduct include taunting, ethnic epithets, or comments like, "Go back to where you came from," whether made by supervisors or by coworkers. So, let us be clear. The president's tweet was a violation of our law. It was harassment of an American, harassment of anybody, because of their national origin. And telling somebody to go back to where they came from is actually part of the examples on the website of the EEOC that if a supervisor or even a fellow worker were to say that to somebody, there could be big trouble for that company. Here we have the President of the United States saying it, and the Republicans in Congress refusing to acknowledge that, in fact, it was actually unlawful. By definition of regulations put forward for a long, long time by the country itself. Incredible. Really. And you'll be happy to hear that a second Republican candidate for Mississippi governor has also now said that he will never meet alone with a woman. Appearances are important, said Bill Waller Jr., who, by the way, was the former Chief Justice of the Mississippi Supreme Court. Appearances are important. What's going on the pushback going on in so many ways. I was sort of thinking to myself last night, wow. Remember how good we felt when Barack Obama was elected and then reelected? And how naive we were. Because while we were celebrating and patting ourselves on the back, remember people saying it was a post-racial America? In fact, our Supreme Court, John Roberts, used all of that to get rid of a huge part of the Voting Rights Act. We're beyond that. Look, we've had a black person as president. There's black people here, there, and everywhere. We did not know that there was this whole other huge part of America that was just simmering in juices of hatred and fear, and the fact that they were being somehow crowded out of their country. And they have been heard from now. And they elected one of their own, Donald Trump. And we are seeing that other side of America, which is frighteningly ugly. Ryan Deto is joining us. Speaking of frighteningly ugly, no, I was thinking, no, I'm kidding.
Got me.
I'm kidding. It reminds me, it segues. It reminds me of this, the funniest segue I ever heard on the TV news, and it was some Sally Wiggin coming out of the weather or something, where somebody said it's really frigid, or some, I don't know. I can't remember it exactly. Or was it? Or was it the weather guy who said it? Speaking of frigid, here's Sally Wiggin. I think that might have been it. No, but it was funny.
It was funny.
Here, get over here. You got to get a mic.
Hello.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
All right. Here, are we on?
Yeah,
No,
we're good.
right?
We're good,
Okay.
right? We're good. I was just trying to get close.
Okay.
Okay.
So, you got this email
Yep.
as I started the show today.
Okay.
Racism, xenophobia, boring.
Oh, boring.
Blah, blah, blah. Nobody gives a shit.
That's right. No one cares. No one cares. That's why it's dominating literally every news cycle at this point.
Well, because the news media are a bunch of, like un-American
That's right.
liberal
We're a bunch of
types.
traitors.
Yeah, we are
We
traitors.
should go back to where we came from.
Well,
which
in
is
fact.
here.
Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Yeah. Fremont, California.
Well, California, I could figure.
That's right.
you.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Break us off into the ocean, right? That's what they say.
God. Okay.
Miss their avocados, I'll say that.
Ryan Deto is a crack writer and reporter for Pittsburgh City Paper, and we're going to pick his brain weekly. Speaking of the race thing,
Yeah.
it's Mike Kelly is a member of Congress.
Yeah.
He, along with AOC and
Connor Lamb, and Mike Doyle, and whatever famous ones, yeah.
Yeah, right. So
Nancy Pelosi.
he represents what, Butler?
Yeah, Butler up to Erie, basically. Yeah.
Butler
16th
up to Erie. So the western, northwestern part of Pennsylvania, and he represents that swath of America in the U.S. Congress.
Yes.
In the House.
Yeah, and he has since 2010, I believe.
All right. He has been heard to say
that the headline for this story is just so laughably funny.
Well, it's what he said.
Yeah, he basically said he's a person of color because he is white. Verbatim, that's what he says. He says, I'm a person of color.
I'm white.
I'm white.
I'm white.
I'm almost certain that almost every American is already aware of this, but the historical concept of person of color has always applied to
people who are not white.
Who are not white.
Right.
Always,
Okay.
Ever since like the 1700s.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So here's his quote. They talk about people of color. I'm a person of color. I'm white. I'm an Anglo-Saxon. People say things all the time. I don't get offended.
Yeah.
What? What?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
What?
It's crazy. Apparently,
are they that stupid, or is it just no? He knows what he's.
No, I don't think so. I don't think most members of Congress are just completely dumb and stupid. But I definitely think that Mike Kelly he's dumb on this issue. I don't think he understands what he's talking about. Apparently, he didn't even read the tweets that Trump put out. So he's just replying to what is in the sphere of whatever media he's consuming about this. And so I guess that's what his comment was to a Vice News reporter about the general hoopla that was surrounding these tweets and the the other congresswomen that were they were directed at, who all of whom happened to be people of
color.
Yes.
I mean, thinking of his district, there aren't a lot of people of color in that district.
No.
Not a lot.
No.
I know a few black people from Erie, but
Yeah, and
not a lot.
Erie does have a pretty substantial and growing. Well, it was growing until Trump came in office.
Immigrant population.
Yeah, exactly. Refugee population. Yeah, that was one of the ways they were able to sustain their population decline.
That's the way America always has sustained its population and its economy.
Rust Belt towns like Erie, Utica. These other kind of hard on their luck towns are basically accepting of refugees because they need to fill their tax base. But yeah, and so Mike Kelly says this comment, and I really think it's emblematic of just how bad a lot of conservatives are on race issues. Like, they're just totally ignorant. I mean, this is not a new. Person of color is not a new statement. I looked up a little bit of the history of it. I think it was first used in America in 1790s, and it was referring to biracial people basically first. And since then, it's just obviously grown. I mean, that's hundreds of years ago. So
I can do the math, right? It is.
So since then, it's just been in our lexicon. It is obviously been used. To apply to people who are not white. It's a catch-all term, basically, for people who are not white. So whereas we can say someone's a black American or we can say someone's a Latino American, but
this was in the Wall Street Journal today, and it's 63% of Republicans and 72% of Trump primary voters last cycle say that you are not truly American unless you are born here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a huge number.
That's huge.
That takes my son out.
Yeah.
56% of Republicans and 63% of Trump primary voters say that you cannot be truly American unless you are a Christian.
Yeah.
That takes me out.
Yeah.
Those are
me too.
Those are big.
Yeah.
I mean, those are over 50%, both if you just look at Republicans in general or if you look at Trump primary voters.
Yeah. I mean, the Christian one is really crazy because that is antithetical to
the foundational documents of the country.
Yeah.
But they don't get it.
No, well, and I think that speaks to the power of white supremacy and, the ascendance of the Christian right. As basically the flag bearers of the conservative movement at this point. And I mean, the whole idea of not being born in the country you can't be American is just is also totally antithetical to our values, and the fact that the vast majority of Americans
we all came from immigrants, unless you're Native American or the descendants of people brought here in bondage.
And we literally just for the first time, I think, in history, elected female Native American Congress people. So if we want to make that claim, why haven't there been the majority of let's say our politicians have been Native American, which isn't the case at all. I mean, it's not.
You want to be born here? Yeah.
Yeah.
That means Native Americans. All you white folks, get the hell out of here.
Yeah. And then also what does that say to the dreamers or
it says you're not wanted.
No, quote unquote anchor babies or whatever, right? But they're born here, so they're American. But I would love to see a poll that would ask those same people how they feel about quote unquote anchor babies, whether or not they're American or not, right?
Well, by virtue of the term, anchor baby, which came from them, which is not a legal term or a term we've heard before until these, wondrous word spinners on the conservative side came up with that.
Yeah.
Calling a human being an anchor baby.
It's insane.
Calling a human being an illegal alien.
Yeah.
Calling human beings anything but human beings.
But I guess all this stuff is we shouldn't be surprised that representatives like Mike Kelly don't understand and are willing to say stupid things, concerning race, because that's how the conservative movement has been talking about racial issues
forever.
For at least the last 40 years.
Forever.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's how the Democrats talked about it before LBJ.
Yes.
Before LBJ signed the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act.
Yeah, I sent out a tweet about, because someone said something about there's that someone said like, Biden said that like Trump is like the most racist
president
we've ever
ever.
Had. It's like, Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow. Oh no, Andrew Jackson.
Yeah.
Hello.
So many. And those were Democrats too. So like this idea that like racism.
Andrew Jackson, Andrew Johnson. I mean, one can go on and on and on and on. Yeah, right. Come on.
Yes, which is crazy. And so, I think like the story blowing up, the Trump racist tweet story blowing up so much and having it trickle into some of these, Western Pennsylvania politicians or Western Pennsylvania conservatives. I think it shows just how weak our whole area is on like addressing race.
God.
And then especially among the conservatives who just like stick their foot in their mouth.
I'm going to actually say something that I'm going to call on the ghost of William Buckley and others before him, and I am going to say that calling Mike Kelly and all of these people conservatives does a disservice to American conservatism historically.
Okay. Yeah.
Would you agree?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, they were all about, granted, they were all about keeping what they had and but Trump's administration is not fiscally conservative.
No.
It's right?
No.
Right. Not at all.
No.
Not at all.
No.
There's a lot of things that conservatives stood for that they do not anymore.
Yeah.
Deficit spending.
Yeah.
I mean, gee.
I think there was something that just said that they're going to predict that the deficit up to $1 trillion.
$1 trillion
since the recession. Yeah.
And this is what happens because they're full of talk.
Yeah.
And they're such unbelievable hypocrites. These are not conservatives. This is now a white nationalist party.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would not call them conservatives.
I don't. Yeah, I think that's right. I think there are a lot of conservative values that even to this day could be sold to the public, and people could convince them as virtuous. I might argue differently, but I think generally could be sold. But that's not what the current Republican movement is really hanging its hat on. It's hanging its hat on immigration and racial issues, and
it's the only hope they have for victory.
I think so.
That's what they think. It got them there the first time.
And I think it actually, even in the 2018 wave, for the Democrats, people might argue, oh, look, it didn't work here. But I think there's just what happened was there were so many people that were upset that Trump was president, and there were so many people upset with the way he handles race that they came out. But it also increased turnout among conservatives too. It does fire them up.
Yes,
it does get them to go to the polls.
Yes, it does.
So even in Pennsylvania, where there was a huge Democratic wave, the difference between what happened post-Obama and post-Trump is really telling, because post-Obama being elected, Democrats, their turnout dropped.
Exactly.
And,
that's what Democrats do.
Yeah. And then all the conservatives, upped, and then post-Trump,
the Democrats came
roaring back. But the conservatives or the Republicans didn't lose turnout.
No, they stayed.
Still increased turnout.
They are steadfast.
Yes.
And we are not.
Yes. And so
they
will continue to do this, and in the way that they have built a defense mechanism around racial issues as well, because there's plenty of people that also just downplay racism as an issue and will gaslight other people into saying, like, the more you say something racist, the more that it doesn't have effect anymore. You can't just play the race card over and over again. And I'll segue into this in terms of Selena Zito going recently on,
okay, Selena Zito is Pittsburgher.
Yes.
Used to write for the
Tribune Review.
Mm-hmm. She
posts what happened.
She used to show up on CNN a lot.
No, she still does.
Does she still?
That's where.
Okay.
Yeah, she's still a pundit for CNN. She's now
and she's written. She writes books about supposedly explaining this area and why it's a Trump rich area.
Why it has moving like 15 years ago, it was still consistently blue everywhere.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
why
Westmoreland
it's gone.
County, all these other areas.
And she, of course, never says it's because of race. She doesn't.
She literally barely mentions race ever. It's never an issue. She has a history of doing
and that
this.
is absolutely the number one reason.
Yes, I agree. And even John Murtha said it, right? You know, John Murtha was a former congressman from Johnstown,
right?
And he even said before he passed away, he was a Democrat, but he was a blue dog Democrat. He was like, people loved him. He even said, you know, people won't vote for Obama here. Like, because they're too racist.
He understood. He understood. Yeah, these people who loved him and who he worked for, he knew them.
I kind of wish he was still alive.
They're racist.
I wish. I'd like to hear.
At least he talks straight.
He did talk straight.
Selena Zito, on the other hand,
yes,
it creates mythologies.
100%. And so she recently continued to do this because she was asked to basically speak for the Trump supporters because she's become like the Trump voter whisperer or whatever ever since she like predicted his rise, quote unquote, predicted his rise in this area. And that's why she basically got a better job at CNN and is a columnist for the Washington Examiner, which is a conservative paper. And so she went on CNN and was asked about the Trump racist tweets and how the supporters would be dealing with them. And she basically threw her hands up and was just like, well, there's so much polarization that I don't think it will affect them. And that's basically all she said. And she didn't mention anything about what the context of these, things were. Just basically like, oh, this is just like, there's just too much polarization. Later in the interview, it's like 2 minutes, she says that one of the biggest problems is that there's an immigration gridlock on both sides, which is like classic. And like there isn't on both sides because it's the Republicans who haven't done anything about immigration. They had a trifecta last year.
They had trifecta being they controlled every house of our Congress. They controlled the White House. They did nothing. They kind of tried, but then because their caucus is so far right at this point that they wanted to basically make the bill just a total immigrant restriction bill, like authored by Tom Cotton and David Perdue from the South, and then it failed because there's no way that's going to get any broad support because that's not good for the American economy is to just totally restrict immigration. And so basically it's like that's the ethos I think coming from even the conservative, even the quote unquote moderate conservative that we just can't talk about race. You can't even bring it up. And even when the president is openly being racist, you can't.
We like not allowed to talk about it. I guess like you can't call him racist because that's gonna gonna rile up this other base. Like why can't we confront this issue? It's terrible. Like,
yesterday on when this vote to condemn the president's tweet. So you got people trying to say, well, the president, Swalwell was repeating some of what Trump has said. And he said, these African nations were shithole nations and blah, blah, blah. And the Republicans are like, Mr. Speaker, the chair, I protest.
Rules matter.
It's vulgar. It's vulgar. You cannot, this is vulgarity. Yeah. Well, it's the president who said it.
Just repeating the president's words.
I know.
Yeah.
And so it was worse to actually call out the president on words that came out of his mouth. You cannot say those words on the floor of the House because Republicans will swoon.
Yeah.
It's not unlike what happened with in the State House in Harrisburg with the Republicans screaming and yelling
it's all about them.
Rules, decorum, and that Republicans, the aiders and abettors of this vulgar monstrosity that passes for our president, would talk about decorum.
Yeah. But honestly, I think they do that because they have no actual response. They have no intellectual response to these issues in the same way that they had no response in Harrisburg where they just had to like blame the rules for
That's all they got.
Yeah, like they are just grasping at straws.
Right.
Anytime you bring up poverty, anytime you bring up inequality, anytime you bring up race, and I kind of bristle at this idea that like like the media shouldn't focus on race because that plays right into Trump's hands, and like maybe that will boost him and all this stuff. It's like this is a life or death moment, I think, in America, and that we need to tackle this issue. I grew up very hopeful about these things. I grew up in a very diverse area. My sister is an immigrant from Guatemala, so I thought that we were really progressing on these issues, and I read Martin Luther King and all these other things, and I was like very proud of America.
Me too.
And I still am proud of America.
Me too.
But I just think that like it's pretty clear that we need to tackle these issues head on, and we need to not like be like, oh, don't bring up racial issues because it'll stoke animosity. It's like, no, we need to make sure that people understand these things on a deeper level and not hide behind things. And so when you have Mike Kelly saying that he's a person of color because he's white, which is so absurd. He also said he's Anglo-Saxon and Irish. That's also
impossible.
Like impossible. There are no Anglo-Saxons in Ireland. They're Celtics. Like, I mean, he doesn't even know his own history. Like, what a joke.
Idiot.
Like,
well, I said he's an idiot.
Yeah.
It says here that Richard Florida, talking to Christiane Amanpour, said he believes that the country has been split in two and will never come back together. That we're going to have to live as two separate countries within the same physical boundaries. Well, that's what we are doing, and I don't think that's doable. I don't know that we're going to fight another civil war, but we might.
I don't think it's going to get to that. I think the majority of the country doesn't want this right now. And the problem is that the Republicans have done a really good job at securing minority rule in terms of how they've take advantage of their structural advantages in the Senate.
Did you see yesterday they flipped the Eastern District Federal Court? They put now there's a majority of Republicans. McConnell got another 40-some-year-old guy named Phipps.
Yeah.
Of course.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, nice.
Phipps. Named Phipps onto the court. That court was always sort of a, neutral-ish court.
Yeah.
It's a Trump court now.
No, that's what I mean.
I know that's what you meant, and this is what they're doing.
Yes, in terms of the structural advantages, because
they don't represent the majority of the people of this country.
And there's so many things, and we talk about this a lot, but in terms of the struggles of how we overtake this, the problem is that we've been behind the eight ball, and like liberals and people who just don't want it to be like this crazy haven't been organized enough to fight these like structural disadvantages that we're now behind. We have to come out and vote and outvote them consistently, right?
But that's what we don't do.
And like it probably won't happen. Or I think it can, but this is what I mean in terms of like us being just totally splintered. No, I think the majority of the country doesn't want this. The problem is that we just are stuck behind the eight ball.
But Ryan, you know who else loves this total splinter?
Who?
Media.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of problems in the media, and I'm members of the media myself. But I know. I mean, what I'm saying is that, like, yes, you're right. Well,
because it's
the media has become entertainment.
It ain't boring,
totally.
Right? We live in an entertainment culture.
Yes.
Total.
Yes.
And
politics is entertainment.
Now.
That's the reason we have two nights of debates, even though like maybe a lot of those people shouldn't have been.
That's
on
why
the
we
debates.
have Donald Trump as the president.
Yes, because he's an entertainer.
He's an entertainer.
Yeah.
And we are screwed. We have been made into a people who are consumers of entertainment.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Our job used to be citizen.
Yeah.
Citizens no more. We are just consumers of entertainment, and they got us. And with the help of technology, they really got us.
Yeah.
And so you might have been a hopeful young man in California, but I think hope is hard to come by. I want to just change subjects while we got you here, because I came across this, and I know this is up your alley. More than 6,200 pedestrians died last year in this country, up 50% in 10 years. Mm-hmm. It was also the second year in a row that overall traffic deaths fell, while pedestrian deaths rose.
Yeah.
They say here that the increase is largely due to the proliferation of SUVs.
Ah, yes. Oh, I'm actually really glad this is getting much more media attention because,
all those big, stupid cars that all those little suburban women are driving and parking. I can't even find
to Walmart or whatever.
I know. I can't even.
They're not loading anything at.
I can't find my car in a parking lot because of the profile.
Yeah.
I mean, it disappears.
I actually think this has a tie to what we're talking about, entertainment and marketing, because I think the proliferation of SUVs is because car companies have just convinced themselves that that's what they need to sell. If you watch any hours of TV, with commercials, not like on Netflix or anything, you'll see the SUV ads, the giant truck ads.
That's right.
Everything.
That's all there is.
That is what they're marketing. They are not marketing as many smaller cars, as many more fuel efficient cars. They have totally gone away from that, probably because gas is like
relatively cheap.
Exactly.
Right.
And yes, and you're right, and we are actually killing more and more pedestrians.
And it's a crisis,
and nobody thinks
nobody gives a damn.
Yeah,
the numbers are in. And why are SUVs killing more pedestrians? And they're responsible because of their greater weight, their higher bumpers, and the fact that they have diminished visibility for some reason, which I find, I don't know why that's there.
Well, because you're up, I think
you're up so high you don't see the little people down below.
Sure.
You just mow them over.
Yeah, well, and also they're just usually SUVs windows, so there's a lot more blind spots in SUVs and all these other things. So I think. Yes, and I think people need to really think about how high the chassis are on these trucks and SUVs, because that's when they strike people, they're hitting them right in the chest instead of the legs, and it's a really big issue. And actually, Allegheny County suffers from some of the most crashes in all of Pennsylvania, and it's something that is not really talked about that much, and it is a growing issue, and we're not really doing anything to address it, and it's.
I want to just throw this by you, too, while we got a chance.
Mm-hmm.
I think last time you were on, I was squawking about all the ugly buildings going up, my fear about the Strip District being destroyed.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to say it's a fear.
Yeah.
This is my prediction. Okay?
Yeah.
You can, I might be dead, but you can watch it happen. It is going, they're going to let the rich and the capitalists destroy it. I was blown away to see this quote. This headline.
Yeah.
The Planning Commission is demanding better architecture for the Strip District.
Yeah.
That is so unlike
any
governmental entity. They just sign off on this shit.
Yeah.
Oh, all you have to do is come to my neighborhood in the East End.
Uh-huh.
The proliferation of ugly buildings that we are supposed to celebrate.
Yeah.
Because it means we're growing.
Yeah, sure.
It is so friggin' ugly.
Yeah.
If Walnut Capital puts up one more building, I'm going to go nuts.
Yeah. No, it's I think that's just how developers they operate now. I wouldn't even put all the blame on the developers too, because I think our structures and our investment are also to blame. We basically, this is how the developers make money for building buildings. If they put too much money into other things, there's not enough incentives that we're giving them to break even, basically. I think this is actually true.
They borrow the money to start with.
Yeah.
My understanding
yes,
is.
but I think the reason why a lot of buildings
Chinese.
are ugly is because they're trying to maximize their profit margins.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And they're blighting the landscape with these.
Well, no, they're not blighting because they're actually building, right? Because there's nothing there before.
Oh yes, there was.
Not the Strip District building. It's just a parking lot right now. Yeah, it's nothing, and so I agree with you that we need to focus on architecture and we need to have better buildings that fit into our overall appeal. But I think it's a mixture of not only demanding that from the developers, but also making sure that they can do it, I guess. Like, and they're not like basically just like sinking money into a project. Like, they're not benevolent, you know? Developers are not benevolent.
I'm shocked. This just in. I am shocked.
But I guess if we want to make it better, we can't just offer sticks. We have to offer some carrots too.
Okay.
You know?
Woo, Ryan. Thank you.
Yeah.
By the way, and we're out of time.
Bummer.
Nice. It always happens.
Yeah.
It happens. Hey guys, I'll be back tomorrow too, and I'm gonna try not to start the show with a sigh. I keep doing that. But thank you for being there. Thank you for being here. And see you.